Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the setup of gas metal arc welding machines. Now, a gas metal arc welding machine requires a constant voltage welding power source. So if you're at home and you want to buy a welding machine that has a wire feeder on it or a MIG welding machine, it has to be a constant voltage welding power source. Okay? You have constant current and you have constant voltage. MIG welding, gas metal arc welding, requires a constant voltage welding power source. Okay? So first thing you need, obviously, is your welding machine. Okay? Now, this is not a welding machine. This is called a wire feeder. Okay? You have to have the welding machine to hook up the wire feeder. So what we're going to do today is we are going to set up this wire feeder to weld with 70S6 wire. Now you can take the rolls off and you can put different types of wires on them. You can use 70S6 wire, you can use flux core, you can use inner shield flux core wire. So these will take any roll. The only thing is you just have to change out all of the components to fit your wire size. Okay? So first thing we're going to do is set up our machine for our wire, our drive rolls. Okay? Now if you take a look here, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but there are a couple of little slots on these. Now these are called V-shaped drive rolls. Now the reason that there's two on there is because there's two different sizes of drive rolls, okay, on this particular one. Okay, if you look at one side, it's for 045, so that's 45 thousandths wire, and then the other side is for 035. I know that our MIG wire is going to be 035 wire, so when I put these drive rolls in, I want to make sure that the 035 is sticking out towards me. Okay. Now right here's our drive rolls. Okay. So we're going to take our 035. We're going to stick it into our drive rolls. Okay. Now this one, you're just going to make a quarter of a turn, and it's going to lock in place. Okay. The top one, if you take this and stick it down, there are gears on the back of this that will hold it in place for you to be able to tighten that down. So we're going to drop this, okay? Make sure our 035 is facing out, because that's the size wire that we're using. We're going to push our drive rolls in, and then also turn it 1/4 of a turn to lock in place. Okay? This is what holds our wire down. This is our tension, okay? These are our guides. This would adjust in and out for your wire. You want your wire to be as close as you can get them to the drive rolls without actually touching the drive rolls. That helps prevent burn nesting. Okay. So now that we have our drive rolls in, the next step that we can do is we can put our roll on. Not really much we can do after we put it on until we set the machine up, but we can put it on. Okay. So now this was a 33-pound spool of ER70S6 wire. Now you can see that this is real shiny. Okay, this is called copper-coated ER70S6 wire. You might see another roll that looks like this. Okay, this is actually flux core wire. Okay, now you don't want to get the flux core wire confused with the non-copper-coated 70S6 wire, because they do have 70S6 wire that looks very, very similar to that flux core wire. The difference being that's a darker gray, the bare wire or the light gray wire is a light gray. And the only difference between the copper coated and that light gray, the bare wire, the copper coating allows for a better arc start. That's about the only difference. It's the same exact wire, just the copper coating allows for a little bit of better arc start. Okay? So now, once we put this wire on, we want to make sure that that wire is going to be feeding down. Okay, we want to come through here, so we can't have our wire feeding from the top and then coming down and 90 in. That's not possible. So you have to make sure our wire is coming this way. So we're going to stick our wire on our roll this way. Now there's a little hole here on the back side of the wire roll, and then there's a spot where you're going to stick that hole. Slide it in there. Then we have this locks in the wire. We'll stick that on. So that prevents the wire from falling off, and having it locked in there prevents that wire from unspooling as well. Okay. Now that we have that on, we can't run it through the wire yet until we get the machine set up. Okay. So first thing we're going to do, the machine is off. Okay. This is a 14-pin receptacle. Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to take this receptacle and we're going to plug it in down here to our welding machine. Now there is a little slot on here that is going to line up with the machine. Don't try to force that in there. You're going to move this around until that slot lines up. It'll push in, and then you can take this and you can tighten it up. Okay? We're going to put that in right on the front of the machine. Okay, now that wire is what actually powers the wire feeder. Okay? Without that wire being connected, there's no power that's going to this wire feeder, and it's not going to work. Okay? Now that you have that connected, on the back side here, there is a power button. Okay? So just because you plug that into the machine does not mean that this is already turned on. You have to make sure, right on the back side, okay, right here, there is a power button. Make sure that that power button is in the on position. That way, when you try to use it, it actually works. Okay? Now, second step we're going to do, since we are welding with a constant voltage power source, we have to make sure that we're setting up for direct current electrode positive. Okay? Now, you can weld on direct current electrode negative, but it has to be an inner shield flux core wire. So, gas metal arc welding is used on direct current electrode positive. Now, if you look at this machine, there's actually a wire that's coming directly out of this block. Okay? This wire energizes this whole block, and it energizes the wire feeding through your line. Okay? If you don't have this connected, you're not going to complete that circuit, and you're not going to have any work. So there's actually a lug that's connected right to the block, and then the wire comes out, and it's right here. Okay? This wire is the same as the electrode holders. Comes with a dense connector on it. Right? We're going to take that, shove it into the positive terminal. Okay? Make sure that we tighten that down. Make sure that's tight. Okay? Now that we have our wire feeder powered, we can turn our machine on. But before we turn our machine on, we actually want to switch this to remote and switch this to MIG welding. Okay? When we were stick welding, we were on the stick setting. Now we're going to move over to the MIG setting, and we have to make sure that we move this to remote. If we leave it on panel, our gun trigger is not going to work. Turn our machine on. Now with stick welding, you will use amperages to adjust your machine. With MIG welding, you will use voltage to adjust your machine. Nice starting point for your voltage is to set that at 21 volts. Now that's going to go up or down depending on the thickness of the metal that you're using, but a good starting point is 21 volts, okay? Now we're going to come back over here. Since we have power to our wire feeder, we can actually take our wire and we can run it through our machine. Let me get, okay, so first thing, the wire is actually sitting in here at an angle, okay? Clearly we cannot run this wire through the wire machine, so we're going to snip off the edge. Now, very important part here, okay? You never want to let go of this wire. If you let go of this wire, it's going to unspool, and the 33 or whatever pound spool that you have is essentially going to be junk, because it's going to unravel in there, and it's raveled up in a specific way to prevent tangling. So what's going to happen is you're going to tangle up the whole roll and essentially make it garbage. Okay? So always keep a hand on this until we get it into our liner with our drive roll holding it down. Okay? So we're going to shove it into the edge here through the guide that we were talking about a few minutes ago. Okay? Now, there's a little slot on the other side. It goes through a liner. We'll show you that here in just a second. We're going to shove it into the other side that goes into the welded gun itself. Okay? want to shove that in there 6 or 8 inches. We'll take that and then lock it into place. Now we can let go. You never want to let go of that wire until that is locked into place. Okay? Very important. Because if you do, then your wire is going to unspool. We're going to have a lot of problems. Okay? Now that we have that in there, this is called our lead or our whip. Okay? Now this whip is a lot different than your stick welding because it's just a wire. Okay? This has what's called a liner inside of it. If you can see this, looks like a piece of braided line. Okay? That liner is where the wire actually flows through. Okay? So this is essentially a big hollow tube that has a liner in the center of it. Okay? That is where our wire is going to come out. Okay? Here's our trigger. You squeeze the trigger, it actuates the rolls on our wire feeder, and that's what sends the wire up through here. Now, before I put anything else on, I want to run this wire up here. That way, it's already in the end of the machine. On this wire feeder itself, okay, I can do 2 things. I can squeeze this trigger, but when I squeeze this trigger, I want to make sure that the gas is off because we don't want to waste gas. Okay? Or we can go right down here. There are 2 toggle switches. Okay? One is for your jog or your hold. So the jog is, I can turn that on, push the button, and it will automatically feed the wire through until I push the button again. Or it can be pushed to manual, where as soon as I let go, it shuts off. Okay, so that's the toggle on the left side. Toggle on the right is your jog or your purge line. So if you're setting up new gas, you don't want to start welding right away because this whole lead is not full of gas. So the first thing you want to do would be to purge your line, okay? And by purging your line, what you're doing is you're sending all of the gas up into here. That way when you start welding, you're going to have shielding gas as soon as you start welding. If you don't do that, you have to wait for the gas to make its way through the whole whip, and then you're going to have a lot of porosity in the weld. So if you push down, that is the, if you push down, that is the purge button. If you pull up, that will actually feed the wire through the liner without holding the trigger and wasting gas. Okay? Now this thing right here is our speed. Okay? Now there's numbers on this one in particular. It goes from 1 all the way up to 10. Okay? So the 1 would be 100. So these are all based off of inches a minute. So if you put it on 2, that means that wire is moving at 200 inches per minute. Okay? Nice rule of thumb for you guys. 21 volts on the wire feeder, 375. So right here's the 2, 3, almost at the 4. 375 inches a minute to start out with 035 70S6 wire. Okay? Now you're going to have to adjust those up or down depending on the thickness of the metal you're using, but it's a great starting point, especially for somebody learning how to weld. Okay? So we're going to set that to 375, and we can either hold the trigger, run that line through. Okay, now we're just going to hold this trigger in until our wire comes out the end here. Okay, so here's our wire at the end of the whip. So it came from the machine all the way through here, right to the end of the whip. Now, once we have that wire pull through here, we're going to put on what is called our gas diffuser. Okay, this gas diffuser takes that shielding gas in there and it equally distributes it over top of this welding wire. So we're going to take that, we're going to put it on. We're going to make sure that this is nice and snug. Okay? And this is our conductor tube. Okay? We have our trigger, conductor tube, gas diffuser. Now, next thing we're going to put on, this is called a contact tip. Okay? This contact tip is used to create create the contact between the wire and the base metal. Okay, so that contact tip has to be sized to the wire. I cannot use a 045 contact tip on 035 wire. I can, but what's going to happen is that wire is not sitting in there real tight, so it's going to be bouncing around in there, and you're going to lose your contact as you're welding. So it's going to be giving a lot of, it's going to seem like you're missing a lot of your weld. You're not getting your connection. Okay, so we're going to take our 035 contact tip, slide it to the wire. Now, this contact tip in particular just has, you know, like a little bevel on it, so it just sits right in here. Okay, there's a raised face on it. When you put the gas nozzle on, it holds it in place. So we're going to take this, stick it in here. Probably helps if I grab it. And if it's too small, we'll go in. Okay, take this. They have to make sure that your wire is coming out of your contact tip. Okay. Next step, in order to hold this contact tip in, you have to put the gas nozzle on. Now this gas nozzle just goes on, and it goes ahead and screws right on. Okay. After you're complete with that, we're going to take the end of our nozzle, and we're going to clip off about 3/8 of an inch. Okay. You want to have about 3/8 of an inch stick out while you're welding. Okay. If you have a real long stick out, what's going to happen is you're going to lose your shielding gas back here. You're going to have a bunch of porosity in your weld. Okay. Take our weld burrs or MIG pliers. We're going to cut that off. Make sure we have about a 3/8 stick. Okay, so now this should usually be recessed in there about 1/8 of an inch, but this is a worn out gas nozzle, so that's why you see the end of your contact. Okay, now that we have that set up, next step that we need to do on the back of this machine, this is where our gas would go in. We can't run MIG wire unless we have a shielding gas. Okay, so we would take our gas from our regulator. We don't have the tank here, I apologize. And we would stick it right into this filter, the end here. Now, gas metal arc welding, you use a mixture gas. Okay, you can use different gases, but the most common gas is a 75% argon, 25% CO2 mixture. Now you can use, if absolutely need be, 100% argon. You can use like a 90-10, but the best quality welding you're going to get is out of a 75-25 bulb. Okay. So we have wire feeder welding machine. We're set at 21 volts. We're set at 375 inches a minute. Okay. Now, if you have your wire that seems to be burning off before it gets to your metal, okay, that tells us that either one of two things: your voltage is too high, or your wire speed is too low. Okay, so you would either adjust one or the other. Okay. Second, if you are welding and you're getting a lot of popping, so your wire is not burning off fast enough, your voltage is too low, or your wire speed is too high. Okay, so that's whenever we get back into school, that's the area that we're going to be practicing on is getting machine sets, getting the right shielding gas, getting the right pressure in the shielding gas, and then creating the weld. Okay, so that is setup of the XMT 304 constant voltage welding machine.